The year was 1945. The world stood at a crossroads. In Europe, the guns had fallen silent, but in the Pacific, a final, terrible storm gathered. Allied forces had fought their way to Japan's very doorstep, from the coral atolls of Tarawa to the bloody shores of Iwo Jima and Okinawa. Each victory came at greater cost than the last. Now, the greatest military operation in human history was being planned: Operation Downfall. This is the story of the invasion that never happened and the impossible choices that prevented it. To understand the dread surrounding the invasion of Japan, one must first understand the nightmare of Okinawa. For 82 days, from April to June 1945, American forces fought a battle of unprecedented ferocity. The Japanese defense was fanatical. Over 110,000 Japanese soldiers died, most refusing to surrender. But the true horror was the mobilization of civilians. Thousands, convinced by propaganda of American brutality, committed suicide or were used as human shields. The U.S. Navy endured its worst trial of the war, with nearly 5,000 sailors killed, most by kamikaze attacks. When the island finally fell, the casualty count was staggering: 12,500 American soldiers dead, 38,000 wounded. For military planners in Washington, a terrifying question emerged. If one island cost this much, what would the Japanese homeland cost? The answer was Operation Downfall, a two-part plan of colossal scale. The first phase, Operation Olympic, was scheduled for November 1st, 1945, X-Day. Its objective, the southern island of Kyushu. The geography was a planner's nightmare. 3 potential landing beaches, dubbed X-Ray, Willie, and Peter, were surrounded by mountains, perfect for defense. The U.S. intended to land 14 divisions, over 750,000 men across these beaches. They would face the Japanese 6th Area Army, a force that intelligence initially estimated at 350,000 troops. But a secret decryption program, codenamed Magic, was about to reveal a catastrophic miscalculation. In July and August 1945, Allied intelligence made a horrifying discovery. Through intercepted and decoded Japanese messages, they learned that Japan had correctly predicted the invasion site, Kyushu. In response, they had poured reinforcements onto the island. The troop count wasn't 350,000, it was over 900,000, a number that was still climbing. The defense plan, Ketsugo, or Decisive Operation, was not just a military strategy, it was a national death cult. Every beach was layered with defenses: concrete pillboxes, minefields, and thousands of suicide boats and midget submarines designed to take out landing craft. The air forces available for kamikaze attacks had swelled from 2,000 to over 10,000 aircraft. The first wave of the invasion was now projected to run directly into the teeth of the most concentrated defense in military history. The Japanese military had mobilized the entire nation. The Patriotic Citizens Fighting Corps included every man aged 15 to 60 and every woman aged 17 to 40. They were trained with primitive weapons: bamboo spears, wooden guns, Molotov cocktails, and satchel charges to be used in suicide attacks against tanks. School children were put to work building fortifications and sharpening bamboo stakes. The official propaganda slogan was "The Glorious Death of 100 Million." The message was clear: the entire population was expected to die fighting or commit suicide rather than surrender. For American planners, this presented an insoluble problem. How do you fight an army that is also the entire civilian population? The casualty projections were revised upwards in a series of increasingly grim meetings. The Joint Chiefs of Staff received estimates ranging from 250,000 to 1 million American casualties. A study for Secretary of War Stimson predicted 1.7 to 4 million American casualties, including 400,000 to 800,000 dead. The Purple Heart medals manufactured in anticipation of the invasion were so numerous that they are still being awarded to American soldiers today, over 75 years later. For the Japanese, the projections were apocalyptic. Based on the ratios from previous battles, military analysts estimated 5 to 10 million Japanese deaths from combat, starvation, and disease. The invasion of Japan threatened to become the single most destructive event in human history. Beyond the conventional defenses, Japan was preparing a suite of terrifying secret weapons. The Kugisho Oka, or cherry blossom, was a rocket-powered human-guided bomb carried by a mothership and designed to smash through a ship's hull. The Kaiten were human-guided torpedoes, essentially underwater kamikazes. There were also Shinyo suicide boats, packed with explosives, designed to swarm the invasion fleet. Perhaps most chilling was Japan's progress in biological warfare. Unit 731 had developed plague-infested fleas and other weapons, and there were plans to use them against the invasion beaches, a move that would have blurred the lines of warfare forever. The U.S., in turn, had its own horrific weapon ready. While infantrymen trained for beach landings, a different kind of team was preparing in the New Mexico desert. The Manhattan Project, a $2 billion secret, was nearing its conclusion. On July 16, 1945, the first atomic bomb was detonated at the Trinity test site. The blinding flash and the mushroom cloud marked the dawn of a new age. For President Truman, attending the Potsdam Conference, the news was transformative. He now had a potential alternative to Operation Downfall. The Potsdam Declaration, issued on July 26th, called for Japan's unconditional surrender and promised prompt and utter destruction if they refused. The Japanese government, dominated by military hardliners, dismissed the declaration. The path was now clear for the atomic option. On August 6th, the B-29 bomber Enola Gay dropped Little Boy on Hiroshima. The city vanished in a flash of light and heat. Approximately 70,000 people died instantly. 3 days later, with still no surrender, the B-29 Boxcar dropped Fat Man on Nagasaki. Another 40,000 lives were erased. The destruction was on the scale never before seen, concentrated into a single moment. Yet even after this unprecedented devastation, the Japanese Supreme War Council remained deadlocked. The military hardliners refused to accept defeat, arguing that Japan could still inflict unacceptable losses on an invading force and negotiate for better terms. The illusion of Ketsugo persisted. As the atomic bombs fell, another blow was striking Japan. On August 9th, fulfilling a secret agreement at Yalta, the Soviet Union declared war and launched a massive invasion of Manchuria. The 1 million-strong Kwantung Army, once Japan's premier fighting force, was now a hollow shell, its best units transferred to defend the homeland. The Soviet Red Army sliced through it with stunning speed. For the Japanese leadership, this was a strategic catastrophe. They had been counting on the Soviets to act as a neutral mediator to negotiate a peace with the Allies. That hope was now shattered. The prospect of a communist occupation of Hokkaido and northern Japan became a terrifying reality. With his government still deadlocked, Emperor Hirohito took an unprecedented step. On the morning of August 15th, the Japanese people heard his voice for the first time, broadcast on the radio. In his dual voice broadcast, he announced the acceptance of the Potsdam terms, stating that the war situation has developed not necessarily to Japanese advantage, and that the enemy has begun to employ a new and most cruel bomb. This was the divine intervention that broke the political stalemate. The emperor's will to end the war, driven by the atomic bombs and the Soviet invasion, finally overruled the military fanatics. The surrender of Japan was now official. Instead of a brutal invasion, American forces arrived in Japan on August 28th for a peaceful occupation. General MacArthur, who would have led the invasion, now oversaw one of the most successful military occupations in history. Japan was rebuilt from the ashes, transformed into a peaceful, democratic nation. The cost of the actual war's end was horrific. Over 200,000 people died in the atomic bombings. Yet this number must be weighed against the projected casualties of Operation Downfall. The invasion would have likely resulted in death tolls orders of magnitude higher for both sides. It was a terrible choice between two horrors. The legacy of Operation Downfall is etched into our world. The Cold War nuclear arms race was born from the atomic demonstrations over Japan. The U.S.-Japan Security Alliance is a direct result of the peaceful occupation that followed the war. The hundreds of thousands of Purple Heart medals made in 1945 remain a tangible reminder, awarded in every subsequent conflict. Military strategists still study the